My fiancée Jessica told me her parents wanted to have a family dinner to discuss the final wedding details. Then she dropped the bomb. She said, "I'm pregnant, 8 weeks." Before I could even process it, she followed up with her terms. "I'm keeping it, and my father is changing the prenup into a trust fund for me and the baby. You're gonna be a great dad, Jacob." It wasn't a conversation, it was a declaration. I knew it was impossible, but I just looked at her, my voice eerily calm. I said, "Okay, I think this weekend's meeting is going to be very important. I'm Jacob. I'm 32 years old and I'm a senior software developer. I build logical systems, I solve complex problems. It's who I am. 2 years ago, I survived testicular cancer. It was brutal, but I beat it. I got through it by being methodical, by breaking down an overwhelming problem into smaller, manageable steps. That's how I approach everything in life." My fiancée Jessica is 29. On the surface, she's perfect. She's an executive assistant to a C-list celebrity, so she moves in circles that value image above everything else. She's beautiful, charming, and knows how to command a room. To everyone else, we were the perfect couple. The successful, stable tech guy and the beautiful, ambitious socialite. Our wedding was just 2 months away. But under the surface, the cracks had been showing for a while. They were small at first, little comments she'd make in passing. She'd sigh about my salary, even though I make well into 6 figures. It just wasn't 7 figures like her friend's husband who worked in finance. She'd talk about the lavish vacations her boss took, then look at my sensible paid-off car with a hint of disappointment. The wedding planning made it worse. Her father, David, is a successful businessman, and he was footing the entire bill. For him, this wasn't a marriage, it was a merger. It was an event to maintain the family's reputation. Jessica embraced this completely. Every conversation was about bigger flower arrangements, a more exclusive venue, a designer dress that cost more than my car. It stopped feeling like our wedding and started feeling like her coronation. Now about the cancer. Early on, I told her everything. The diagnosis, the fear, the fight. I wanted complete honesty between us. But I left out one crucial detail. The chemotherapy that saved my life also left me completely sterile. 0 sperm count, a medical impossibility to have children naturally. I didn't tell her not because I was being deceptive, but because it was a quiet test. A silent question I needed answered before I committed my entire life to her. Was she with me for me, or was she with me for the life she imagined? The perfect house, the perfect kids, the perfect Instagram family. I needed to know that if that future wasn't possible, she would still choose me. Her pregnancy announcement wasn't just a lie, it was the answer to my question, and it was the wrong one. The moment Jessica left the room, the fragile calm I was projecting shattered, not into rage, but into pure, cold focus. The game had been declared. She had made her move, assuming I was a pawn. She was about to find out I was the one playing the board. I didn't waste a second. My first call was to Michael. He's my oldest friend, and more importantly, a damn good family lawyer. I laid it all out, my voice flat relaying the facts without emotion. The cancer, the sterility, her announcement, her terms. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then he just said, "Wow, okay. Operation Checkmate is a go. Michael got it." He didn't offer sympathy, he offered strategy. He said, "Do not engage, do not argue, let her believe she has you cornered. The more confident she is, the harder she'll fall. Just gather your weapons." Weapon number 1 was the truth. The next morning, I took a personal day. I drove to the oncology center, the place I hadn't set foot in for 2 years. The memories were heavy, but I pushed them down. I wasn't there as a patient anymore. I was there as an archivist. I requested certified copies of my complete medical history, specifically the post-treatment fertility analyses. I did the same at 2 other independent labs I'd gone to for second opinions. By noon, I had 3 separate sealed envelopes, each containing a notarized document stating in cold clinical terms, sperm count 0. I had turned my personal medical tragedy into an irrefutable legal fact. Weapon number 2 was her lies. That same afternoon, I met with a private investigator Michael recommended, a quiet, older man named Arthur who looked more like a retired professor than a detective. I gave him 3 names, Jessica, Tyler, and Brandon. I gave him their schedules. I said, "I don't need speculation. I need a timeline. I need locations. I need photographs. I need it in 48 hours. He just nodded and said, "It'll be on your desk by Thursday." He was true to his word. The email arrived at 4 p.m. on Thursday. It was a PDF file, clinical and detached, page after page of photographs and logs. Jessica leaving her office and getting into Tyler's car. Not once, but 3 times in the last 2 weeks, them going to an apartment that wasn't hers, timestamps, addresses. Then there were the pictures from her yoga mornings. Jessica in gym clothes meeting Brandon, not at the studio, but at a coffee shop before they both drove to his place. The report was a monument to her deception built brick by brick. Seeing it didn't hurt. The hurt had already happened. This was just data, confirmation. Now for the final move, the invitation. I waited until Friday evening. I sent 2 separate professionally worded text messages, one to Tyler, one to Brandon. The message was identical. Good evening. This is Jacob, Jessica's fiancé. We are having an important family dinner this Sunday to discuss a significant announcement regarding Jessica's future. Your presence has been requested to ensure all parties are fully informed. Please confirm your attendance. It was corporate cold and deliberately vague. It sounded official, like a legal summons, but wasn't. It was an invitation they couldn't refuse without raising suspicion. Brandon replied within minutes, "Sure, what's this about? I just texted back the time and the name of the very expensive restaurant David had booked." Tyler was more cautious. He called, "Hey man, is everything okay? I kept my voice level. Everything will be made clear on Sunday, Tyler. It's in everyone's best interest that you're there." He agreed. The trap was set. All the pieces were in place. Jessica thought she was walking into her coronation. She was actually walking to her tribunal, and I had just invited the other star witnesses. For the next 3 days, Jessica lived in a fantasy of her own creation. She wasn't just confident, she was radiant. She believed she had executed the perfect corporate takeover of my life, and now she was simply enjoying the spoils of her victory. I'd hear her on the phone with her sister Stephanie, her voice buzzing with excitement. It wasn't about the baby, it was about the assets. She said, "Stephanie Dad's lawyers are drafting the trust now. It's ironclad. It protects us." The emphasis on us was clear. This was a team victory for them. She'd laugh and say, "Honestly, it's for the best." Jacob's a good guy, but he just doesn't have the killer instinct. I have to be the one to secure our future. I just sat in my home office, listening, letting the words wash over me like lines from a poorly written play. Every sentence was another piece of evidence. Then came the social media campaign. Her Instagram, which was already a carefully curated highlight reel of a life she didn't quite have, went into overdrive. She posted a picture of her hand diamond ring sparkling placed delicately over her flat stomach. The caption read, "The next chapter is going to be the best one yet. Blessed new beginnings." 200 likes in 10 minutes. Her friends, her family, all commenting with hearts and champagne emojis, completely oblivious. They were celebrating a fiction. The spending started on Friday. My phone began to chime with notifications from the credit card app. It was the supplementary card I'd given her for emergencies. Apparently, this was an emergency of the highest order. A notification for $800 at a designer boutique. I imagined her buying a dress for the celebratory dinner on Sunday. Another notification, $1,200 from a high-end spa. A prenatal relaxation package, I presumed. Then came the big one, $3,000 at a luxury handbag store. She wasn't just spending money, she was spending my complicity. She was testing the limits, assuming my silence was acceptance. I didn't say a word. I just took a screenshot of every single transaction. Exhibit C. But the worst part was her attitude towards me. The condescension was suffocating. She treated me less like a partner and more like an employee who had just been given a surprising but ultimately beneficial promotion. On Saturday morning, she walked into my office while I was working. She said, "Jacob, we need to talk about your career path." I said, "My career path is fine, Jessica." She sighed the kind of long-suffering sigh one gives to a difficult child. "It's not fine anymore. We're going to have a family. You can't just be a developer forever. You need to be thinking about management, about a VP track. My father can make some calls. You need to project success." She looked around my office at my posters of vintage sci-fi movies, my collection of programming books, and this all has to go. We'll need to turn this into the nursery soon. You can work from the kitchen table. She said it all with a smile, as if she were doing me a favor, as if she were generously bestowing upon me the gift of her superior vision for my life. A life I had built myself that she now intended to dismantle and redecorate to her liking. I just nodded. I said, "You're right. We should definitely discuss our future." She beamed, completely satisfied. She had no idea the discussion I had in mind involved a table for 8 and a truth she couldn't run from. Every condescending word, every false post, every reckless purchase was just her tightening the rope around her own neck. I just sat back and let her pull. The restaurant David had chosen was the kind of place where the waiters wore tuxedos and the water glasses were never empty. It was Jessica's natural habitat. When Michael and I arrived, her family was already seated at a large round table in a semi-private alcove. They looked like royalty holding court. David, at the head of the table, exuded an air of smug satisfaction. Jennifer, his wife, was beaming, and Jessica was glowing, basking in the attention, convinced this was the night her future was officially secured. She saw me and waved a bright, theatrical gesture. "Jacob, darling, you're late." I smiled calmly. "Sorry, we got held up." I gestured to Michael. "Everyone, this is my good friend Michael. I hope you don't mind. I asked him to come along for support." David sized Michael up, saw his well-tailored suit, and gave a curt nod. "Any friend of Jacob's? Sit. We have champagne coming." Saturday. The air was thick with unspoken expectations. Jessica placed her hand on mine, but her eyes were scanning the room, making sure everyone saw her. She was performing. 5 minutes later, Tyler walked in. He looked confused, scanning the restaurant until he saw our table. He saw Jessica, and his face broke into a small, hopeful smile. Then he saw me, her fiancé, sitting next to her, holding her hand. The smile vanished. Jessica's face went rigid. The color began to creep from her cheeks. "Tyler, what are you doing here?" she whispered, her voice tight with panic. Before he could answer, Brandon appeared behind him. He was dressed up, looking equally bewildered. He spotted Jessica, and then his eyes landed on Tyler, and then on me. The realization dawned on his face like a slow, sickening sunrise. Jessica looked like she'd seen a ghost. Her hand, the one on mine, was now ice cold. She shot me a look of pure, venomous fury. David and Jennifer were just confused. "Jessica, do you know these gentlemen?" her mother asked. That was my cue. David cleared his throat, ready to begin his grand pronouncement. "Well, now that we're all here," he began, glancing awkwardly at the two newcomers, "I suppose we should get to the reason for this celebration." I held up a hand, a quiet but firm gesture that stopped him mid-sentence. I said, "Actually, David, before we celebrate, I think we need to clarify a few things. To ensure Jessica's future is as secure as possible." I reached down and placed a simple manila folder on the pristine white tablecloth. The sound it made was barely audible, but in the sudden silence, it felt like a gunshot. Jessica stared at the folder as if it were a snake. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment. Then I pushed the folder gently across the table toward David. "David," I said, my voice perfectly level, "inside that folder, you will find my complete medical history from 2 years ago." David looked at me, then at the folder, his brow furrowed. He opened it. I watched his eyes scan the first page, then the second. I saw the moment he understood. His face, which had been flushed with pride, slowly turned a deep, blotchy red. Jennifer leaned over. "What is it, dear?" she whispered. It says he's..." David couldn't finish the sentence. I finished it for him. "It says, I'm sterile, Jennifer, a side effect of the chemotherapy. 0 sperm count. It is medically, physically, and biologically impossible for me to be the father of Jessica's child." "This is a lie," Jennifer shrieked, her voice cracking. "You faked this. You're trying to humiliate her." That's when Michael spoke for the first time, his voice calm and authoritative. "Good evening," he said, addressing the table. "My name is Michael Chen, and I'm Jacob's legal counsel. What you're looking at, sir, are certified and notarized copies from 3 separate medical laboratories. Any attempt to claim these documents are fraudulent will be met with a lawsuit for defamation and slander. I assure you, they are very, very real." The word lawyer hit the table like a punch to the gut. The energy shifted completely. The smug confidence evaporated, replaced by raw panic. Jessica, realizing the medical argument was a dead end, switched tactics. She burst into tears, pointing a trembling finger at me. "He's doing this to punish me because I wanted to get married. He's cruel. He's trying to ruin my life." I didn't even look at her. I turned my calm, unwavering gaze to the 2 men still standing awkwardly by our table. "Tyler." "Brandon," I said, my voice quiet. "Jessica told me this baby was mine. She used it to try and lock me into a financial arrangement for the next 18 years. I have to ask, what did she tell you?" The 2 men looked at each other, then back at Jessica's tear-streaked face. The pieces were clicking into place for them, too. They were just as much a part of her scheme as I was. Tyler spoke first, his voice filled with a dawning disgust. She She told me you two were basically over, that you were just roommates and that you were moving out. She said she was finally ready to be with someone who appreciated her. Brandon nodded, his face hardening. She told me you didn't want a family, that you were the one holding her back. She said you both agreed to see other people. The lies, all of them hung in the air, contradicting each other, weaving a tangled web of deceit that was now impossible to escape. David finally found his voice. It wasn't a shout, it was a low, dangerous growl. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking at his daughter. Jessica, is this true? And that's when she broke. The performance was over. The tears were real now, but they weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of utter, abject defeat. She sobbed, her voice barely a whisper, a confession that echoed through the silent restaurant. I don't know. I was scared. I don't know who the father is. The chaos that followed was almost operatic. David slammed his fist on the table, rattling the champagne glasses. He was a man whose entire world was built on image and reputation, and his own daughter had just detonated a bomb in the middle of it in public. Jennifer was trying to comfort Jessica, who was now wailing uncontrollably. Stephanie, her sister, was just staring into space, her own complicity dawning on her. The entire restaurant was watching. Whispers erupted from every table. Michael and I stood up. I placed a $100 bill on the table to cover our drinks. I looked at the wreckage of the family, at the smoldering remains of Jessica's grand plan. I said, I think our business here is done. Please enjoy your dinner. And then we turned and walked away, leaving them to drown in the truth. The car ride home with Michael was silent. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I just felt empty, like I had just completed a long, grueling project at work. The code was compiled, the program was deployed, and the job was done. There was just a quiet, hollow sense of finality. The storm I had unleashed, however, was just beginning. I didn't have to witness it directly. The shockwaves reached me in waves over the next few days. According to Michael, who heard it from a contact who knew the restaurant manager, David didn't even wait for the check. The moment we walked out, he made a series of phone calls right there at the table, his voice a low-controlled fury. The $50,000 deposit for the wedding venue canceled? He'd eat the loss just to erase the event from existence. The caterer, the $10,000 floral arrangement, the band, all gone in a series of curt, brutal conversations. He wasn't just canceling a wedding, he was liquidating a failed asset. The first tangible consequence hit Jessica the next morning. She apparently tried to pay for a coffee with the supplementary credit card, declined. She tried again, declined. The barista told her the card was frozen. She called the bank and they informed her that the primary cardholder had revoked her access. The financial umbilical cord had been severed. Then came the car. The sleek white BMW. She was so proud of the one she used. To subtly belittle my own practical sedan wasn't hers. It was leased in her father's company name. On Tuesday afternoon, while she was at her sister's apartment, a tow truck arrived and quietly took it away. Just like that, her most important status symbol was gone. The apartment David had been renting for her, the one she was supposed to move out of after the wedding, received an official 30-day notice to vacate that same day. Tyler and Brandon, as expected, vanished. They blocked her number. They blocked her on social media. They were loose threads in her grand tapestry of lies, and they wanted nothing more than to be cut free. She had used them, and now they had no more use for her. She was a liability. She tried to rally her friends, her sister, her mother. She tried to spin the narrative, painting me as the villain who had orchestrated a cruel public ambush. But the problem with a lie is that it requires everyone to agree to believe it, and at that dinner, the lie had been laid bare for everyone to see. Her credibility was shot. But the real blow, the one that turned her private humiliation into a public spectacle, came on Wednesday. A friend from college sent me a link with no context, just a wide-eyed emoji. It was a video posted on TikTok and already spreading like wildfire on Twitter and Reddit. Someone at a nearby table in the restaurant had filmed it all. The shaky phone footage captured the whole scene. My calm presentation of the folder, Michael's intervention, the dawning horror on Tyler and Brandon's faces, and the centerpiece, Jessica's tearful, desperate confession, I don't know who the father is. The internet is a cruel and efficient arbiter of justice. Within hours, the video had millions of views. Jessica wasn't just a cheating fiancé anymore, she was a meme. The comments were a tidal wave of ridicule and condemnation. The way he just sat there and let her walk into it, chestnut checkers. I don't know who the father is while sitting with her fiancé and two of the other options. The audacity. That lawyer friend is the MVP. Every man needs a Michael. As I watched the comments scroll by, I realized the real trial didn't happen at that dinner table. It was happening on thousands of screens in front of millions of strangers. And this brought a strange clarity to the whole situation. What was so interesting about this story was the way justice was served. At first, the stage for her scheme was a private dinner, a controlled environment where she believed she held all the power. But then the stage was moved to a much larger, more powerful arena, social media. This is the very nature of the modern court of public opinion. The people at the dinner might have been swayed by family ties or social pressure, but the thousands of strangers watching a video are not. They become an objective jury, judging only based on the clear evidence presented. The video of Jessica's confession was Exhibit A, an undeniable piece of evidence. This story shows an important truth of the 21st century power no longer just lies with those who have titles or money, it also lies with those who hold the digital proof. In a world where anything can be recorded, your actions are your final legacy, and anyone can become the judge. Jessica tried to fight back. She posted a tearful non-apology on her Instagram story, talking about being in a vulnerable place and how her private moment of crisis was cruelly exploited. It was like trying to put out a forest fire with a water pistol. The video was the truth. Her words were just noise. Her company, where she worked as an assistant, caught wind of it. A brand built on female empowerment couldn't afford to be associated with an employee who had become a viral symbol of deceit. She was quietly let go by the end of the week for violating the company's social media policy. The scepter of power she had wielded so confidently, her beauty, her social connections, her father's money had been shattered. She had nothing left. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel vengeful. I just felt the quiet, profound satisfaction of a problem being solved, of a system returning to equilibrium. She had written a bad line of code in our life together, a logical fallacy that couldn't hold, and all I had to do was press compile and watch it all crash. The aftermath was a study in contrasts, a perfect real-world example of cause and effect. It was like watching two different movies play out on a split screen. On one side, there was Jessica's world, a world of accelerating collapse. The viral video became her digital ghost haunting every aspect of her life. She couldn't go to a coffee shop without someone whispering and pointing. Her attempt to find a new job in a similar field was a non-starter. Her name was now synonymous with a scandal her potential employers could find with a 10-second Google search. She ended up moving into her sister Stephanie's spare room, a cramped space filled with boxes and old furniture. The vibrant, confident woman who had commanded that restaurant table was gone, replaced by a ghost living on someone else's charity, surrounded by the wreckage of her own choices. Her father, David, maintained a cold, transactional silence. He had invested in a sure thing, and when the asset proved faulty, he simply wrote it off. There was no fatherly comfort, just the brutal logic of a failed business deal. She was a bad investment, and he had cut his losses. Then there was my world, and it was quiet. For the first time in years, my home was truly peaceful. The constant low-level anxiety that had hummed beneath the surface of my relationship with Jessica was just gone. I didn't realize how much space her ambition, her insecurities, her constant need for more had taken up in my head until it was empty. The first thing I did was reclaim my space. I went out and bought a vintage poster for a sci-fi movie. I loved the kind of thing she would have called childish and off-brand. I hung it in the living room, right where a generic, soulless piece of abstract art she'd bought used to be. It felt like an act of rebellion. I started coding a personal project on weekends, something just for fun, without the pressure of it needing to be a billion-dollar startup. I reconnected with the friends she had deemed negative influences, the guys I could just be myself with, talking about video games and bad movies, without being judged for my lack of a VP track. And then, something unexpected happened. Messages started trickling in. Not from close friends, but from acquaintances, old colleagues, people on the periphery of my life who had seen the video. They weren't gossipy or intrusive, they were messages of quiet respect. "Hey, Jacob saw what happened. Just wanted to say, you handled an impossible situation with incredible class." That took guts, man. Mad respect for how you stood up for yourself. One message from a woman I'd worked with on a project years ago stood out. She wrote, "My ex-husband did something similar to me, but I didn't have the strength or the proof to fight back. Watching you calmly present the facts was cathartic. Thank you for that." I realized then that the story wasn't just about me and Jessica anymore. It had become a symbol for anyone who had ever felt unheard, disrespected, or trapped in a narrative written by someone else. My quiet, logical stand had become a victory for them too. My new life wasn't about sudden riches or a string of new relationships. It was richer in a different way. It was the wealth of authenticity, the freedom to be unapologetically myself. The peace that comes from knowing your world is built on a foundation of truth, not on the shifting sands of someone else's approval. While Jessica was living in the tattered remains of the image she had tried to build, I was simply living. And for the first time in a very long time, it felt like enough. Looking back, I don't feel a sense of triumphant joy. There's no celebration in watching someone's life unravel, even if they were the architect of their own destruction. What I feel is quiet, a profound sense of peace. It's the feeling of a heavy weight being lifted, a weight I didn't even fully realize I was carrying until it was gone. The constant low-level static of her disapproval, the pressure to be someone I wasn't, it's all been replaced by a clean, clear silence. And in that silence, I can finally hear myself think again. A lot of people have asked me why her world crumbled so completely, so fast. The answer, I think, lies in an idea sociologists talk about called social capital. There are two kinds. There's bonding capital, which is built on real trust and genuine affection, the kind I have with Michael, who stood by me without a single question. Then there's bridging capital, which is built on superficial connections, on image, and on mutual benefit. Jessica's entire network was made of bridging capital. Her friends were people who came to the parties I paid for, who admired the car her father leased, who saw her as a connection to a certain lifestyle. They weren't betraying her when they abandoned her. They were simply acting according to the nature of their relationship. When the benefits disappeared, the connection ended. It's a harsh lesson about the danger of building a life on the fragile foundation of what people think of you, instead of on the bedrock of who you truly are. But the most important question is one I had to ask myself late at night when the house was still and the glow of the city was the only light. The story is satisfying because I won, because my quiet strategy paid off and she was exposed. But what if it hadn't? What if the video was never posted? What if I struggled to get back on my feet? Would my decision to walk away still have been the right one? The answer is yes. Absolutely yes. We are all tempted by something called outcome biases, the tendency to judge a decision based on its result. But the real value of what I did, the real victory, didn't happen when the video went viral or when David canceled the wedding. It happened in the silence of that restaurant, in the split second I chose my own self-respect over her toxic fantasy. The success of walking away isn't measured by a bank account, but by the peace you reclaim for your own soul. The business success, the public vindication that was just a bonus, a nice ending to the story. The real victory, the one that mattered, was one the moment I put that folder on the table. It wasn't loud, it was quiet, and it was the sound of my own life finally starting over.